In this video, we'll explore circles. Now, a circle represents a set of points that are a fixed distance from a fixed point. And that distance is represented by our radius, and that fixed point is the center of the circle. We have a standard form of an equation using the center and the radius, and you'll see that it's x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals the radius squared. And what you should notice is that when we list the center versus how they're listed in the equation, they look kind of opposite, and that's one way that can help you think about it. So say I look at this circle here and I want to write the standard equation. I can see that my center is at 4, 2, and I can see that my radius, if I count to the edge, is 2 units any direction I go from the center. So the way I write that is I'm going to plug in my h and my k, so it's x minus 4 quantity squared, y minus 2 quantity squared, and 2 squared for my units for my radius. So replace that 2 squared with 4, and I have my equation. Now if I want to graph a circle in standard form, I need to remember that my h and my k are going to be my center, and think about them as being opposite what you see in the standard equation. And then I have to remember that my radius is going to be square root of the value that's given in the equation. So I'll plot that center, I determine where my radius is, and then I draw my circle. So if I have the equation x plus 2 quantity squared plus y minus 3 quantity squared equals 16, I want to determine, well, what's my center? Well, it's got to be the opposite values I see, so it's going to be negative 2 comma 3, and my radius would be the square root of 16, which is 4. So I start with that center, and then I want to use that radius to help me have an idea of where my circle should be, and you can draw out the radius if you want so that you know where do you make that circle. Now, the last thing I would have to do is find the intercepts of a circle in the same way I find the intercepts of any equation. I'm going to plug a 0 in for y when I solve for the x-intercept, and I plug a 0 in for x when I want to solve for the y-intercept. So I'm going to plug a 0 in for y in this case. When I simplify it, I'm going to end up with this being x minus 1 quantity squared plus 4 equals 9. I'm going to subtract the 4 over, and then take the square root of both sides to remove that square. I have to remember that gives me a plus or minus the square root of 5. So I add 1 to both sides, and this tells me that my x-intercepts will be at 1 plus the square root of 5 and 1 minus the square root of 5. For my y-intercept, I'd plug in 0 for x and then solve for y. So I plug in 0, negative 1 squared becomes positive 1. I've got the y plus 2, the quantity squared, equals 9. I'm going to move the 1 over and then take the square root of both sides. When I do that, I do want to remember the plus or minus, but also I want to simplify the square root of 8, and that simplifies to 2 the square root of 2. So last thing I have to do is shift this 2 to the other side, and that becomes negative 2. So it's negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 2. So it's negative 2 plus 2 to the square root of 2, negative 2 minus 2 to the square root of 2 on the y-axis. In addition, I want to be able to rewrite my equations into standard form. So to do this, I'm going to have to move my x's so that the x's are grouped together, my y's grouped together, and all the constants to the other side of the equation. I'm going to group those like variables and complete the square for each variable, so then I can rewrite it in factored form with that x minus h and the y minus k quantity squareds. So let's take an example of this. So here I've got x squared plus y squared minus 6x plus 8y minus 11. I want to get my x's together, my y's together, and I want to move that 11 to the other side. So I moved the 11, so it becomes a positive 11. Now I want to work on completing the square for my x's, completing the square for my y's. And whatever I have to add here to complete the square, I need to add to the right hand side. Whatever I need to complete the square for my y's, I need to add to the right hand side as well. So if I think about it, I need to take my middle term, divide by 2, and square it. So it's negative 6 divided by 2 squared is 9. So I add 9 here, add 9 to the right hand side. for my y value. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. I plug 16 into both sides. So now I've changed them into their factored form. That would be x minus 3 and y plus 4 equals 36. And what's nice is if you think about the divided by 2 factor, that tells me what my factored form is going to be. And it's minus 3, and here this was 4, it's plus 4. Now I need to figure out the center and my radius. So my center would be my opposite of what I see, so 3, negative 4. And my radius would be the square root of the value I have. So that would be 6. So I'm going to plot the center, draw out my radius, and if you have a compass, that's going to be very helpful in trying to put this together as well to help you measure out that 6 units and make a nice circle.